And we thought we'd stick to... Good afternoon everyone, it's John and Lisa, and welcome to this week's Ask the Team. We thought we'd stick to very much house theme. We don't always stick to that rigidly, and we're talking house prices, we're talking house data, so please bear with us. But we've been reflecting on what we have seen in October in terms of the market, and recently received Rightmove report that puts some of the facts and figures behind that. So it's interesting for us to just look through that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to look at what we're feeling on the ground at the moment and then comparing that to the report that came out from Rightmove. What I like about the Rightmove report is it's localised, so it doesn't just give us national statistics. It gives us where are you by not just the area of the country, like for example we fall into the northwest, but it will give us city by city. So it is really interesting data, and of course probably you could argue the most important data.
Yeah, absolutely. But
if we look, get our hands on.
But before we go into that detail, let's look at what we know from the wider market. So we've had 14 quarters since the pandemic, I suppose. We've had 14 quarters of quite incredible house price growth.
We have. Not sustainable. We all know.
Whilst we would love it to be
sustainable,
it's not. I think we hoped that there would be a gradual, and we hoped and expected there to be a gradual softening of that house price growth, but it was probably a little bit more sudden and took more people by surprise. And I think we all remember the mini budget, and although a lot of that's been rewound now, the impact is that did set off a bit of a run on increasing interest rates. So we are in a different market, but it's a return to kind of what we always used to know. So the market hasn't suddenly died, the market hasn't suddenly taken a huge crash. We're really just returning to a more normal, pre-pandemic, priced sensitive, market where well-priced houses in good areas will always find a buyer.
Yeah, and I think we've been quite keen with our 9-step plan to always be competitively priced. In fact, the first point on our 9-step plan is price, because it's very, very important. If you hit the market and you are overinflated in terms of the price, you don't get the interest, and without getting the interest you don't get the traction, and often you don't get the best price, best position. So I think for us it's almost a return, it's a return to normality, isn't it?
And if we think, let's talk about some of those specifics you mentioned earlier on, and again it would be easy to get fixated on, I guess, some of the negative headlines. So if we think about in the last month, that asking prices have gone backwards, so they've gone back about 1.1%.
Yep. 1.1 exactly.
Let's not focus on that, because actually that's still on the back of a very, very good year. So the number for Chester, for this area, whilst it might have gone back this month, it is still quite high.
Well, we're 7.2 annual growth in this area, and when we look at that compared to other areas in the northwest and in the north of England, we're faring very, very well. The demand is still here.
And also, by the way, that 1.1% monthly reduction, that is only what typically happens as well in a normal market. So again,
completely.
That wasn't the same last year. If you go back to 2019, do house prices go backwards a bit as you reach the end of the year, as people try to secure sales? Yes, they absolutely do. So that is the kind of number you'd expect to see typically back in 2019.
Completely.
Other numbers. We're still seeing some new sellers. So whilst house price might have gone backwards, I think there's been an increase. I think something like 13% in new sellers coming to the market. But equally, there's been an increase in the number of price reductions. So I think as we go back in those 14 quarters of growth, the sort of rule book to a certain extent in valuing homes seemed to be thrown out the window. Crazy things were happening with properties selling off market. Now, of course, there are properties on the market which need to be corrected. So I think the figure I saw was
quite a lot, isn't there, of reductions?
8%, which kind of when I saw that in the Rightmove report, I was quite surprised, because some days it feels like I'm going onto Rightmove and I'm seeing, the majority of houses that are new are reductions, but actually 8% is not as high as I thought it might be.
No, I thought it would be a little bit higher, and I think the last few weeks or the last week. I think because people are seeing the price reductions, it is giving a lack of confidence to the market, when really I think here in Chester anyway, we are in a bit of a bubble. We're very lucky we've got the demand to sustain what it is we've got on the market at this moment.
First time buyers are probably impacted more than most. So if you think about the types of people, you've got second steppers, and you suppose you've got people at the top of the ladder who are maybe at the higher end. To a certain extent, the activity is still there with those first time buyers. Some of those are still clinging on to rates and mortgages that were agreed, desperately trying to find a property. Others, I think, I've no doubt, will be put off and probably deferring a home search, although what we are hearing and seeing is that whilst rates did spike up, they are now starting to come backwards.
Very much, and I think, we'd met a mortgage broker a few days ago, and there's some really positive products coming back to the market, which can absolutely help. And, if anyone here is watching and they are wanting to have some advice in terms of mortgage, please do make sure that you go to an all of market broker, because if you are just looking at a few banks and you're doing this on your own, you may well not see some of the products that are out there. But really, things are getting back to normal. Yes, a lot of products were pulled. Yes, that did have an impact, but it is slowly coming back, and quite often there are ways around it if you have the right kind of mortgage advice.
So that era of low rates is probably behind us now, but again, a bit like the housing market, the unsustainable growth is over. The era of historically low rates is over. We're getting back to the kind of the normality, I think, and I think once people get used to that, whilst we're in this typically slower period, there are still many determined buyers out there, determined sellers, people who will have to move.
Yeah.
They may just be deferring their moves until the new year.
Exactly, and I think the new year, we often have a big launch. Well, we have a number of launches at Boxing Day ready for the new year. I think once we get into the new year and through Christmas, things will look much more positive. But we've got lots of data here. Please do reach out to John or I if we can help with any questions in relation to your home move. We'd love to help. We've got lots of stats. We can talk through any questions that you might have.
Good. We'll see you next time.
See you next